Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today. This is Michelle Savage with XBRL US, and you are here for our webinar on validation rules for IFRS and US GAAP. Participate in the public review. The speakers on our presentation today will be Lou Roman. Lou is Vice Chair of the XBRL US Data Quality Committee, and he is also Vice President of XBRL Services at Merrill Corporation. We also have Campbell Pride, who is President and CEO of XBRL US. Today's program is being recorded. Everyone on the call is on mute, with the exception of the presenters, of course. And as we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please click on the Q&A link at the top of your console and key in your question, and we'll take them as we go through. We are also offering CPE credit for today's session. So if you have opted to get CPE credit, please make sure that you respond to the poll questions that we'll be taking at 2 points during the presentation. Last, if you have any kind of technical issues, please email us at support, SUPPORT, @xbrl.us, and we'll do our best to get you back and online again. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lou Roman, who is going to walk us through a little bit of background on the committee. Lou?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. The mission of the committee, as you can see on the screen here, is to develop freely available guidance and validation rules to eliminate inconsistencies and errors in the XBRL data in order to enable automated analysis of the data. So this webinar is part of developing that guidance and those rules. There's a couple of key words in that mission that participants on this call today may be interested in, and one of them is the word eliminate, which suggests that every filer that's filing with the SEC uses these rules to check their XBRL filing before they submit it to the SEC. We strongly encourage every filer to do that. And then the second word I was talking about is the word freely, which means these rules, they're free of charge to check your XBRL file against these rules. There truly is no cost to do it. The DQC clearly wants everybody and everyone to take advantage of using the rules. So that's the mission. On the next slide is the activities of the committee. And there's three basic activities that we do. The first one is to develop the unambiguous guidance on how to tag financial data, and then to develop the freely available automated validation rules with the purpose to verify compliance with that guidance, and then to prevent or detect tagging errors. So that's developing the guidance and the rules. The second one is a lot of what this webinar is about today, is obtaining input through public exposure of the proposed guidance and rules, and then incorporates that input as appropriate into the final approved guidance and validation rules. We'll talk a bit more about that. The third activity of the committee is to have regularly scheduled meetings with SEC staff. And we have been doing that for quite a while. The Data Quality Committee members meet face-to-face with the SEC staff. And the purpose there is to inform them of our activities and to seek feedback from them and to answer any questions. So I will say from attending those meetings that the SEC staff is very aware of the Data Quality Committee activities and very aware of these rules and the guidance that has been put out. So those are the three basic activities of the committee, and the second one being a key item. On the next slide, we talk here about the members of the committee. What is the DQC and who's on it? But understanding the membership of the DQC is really key to understanding the power and the credibility of the rules that are being produced. The committee consists of several different types of, I'll call them functional areas that impact financial reporting. First one is analysts, Credit Suisse, Holt, the CFA Institute, very involved, data providers. There's 4 listed here: S&P Global Market Intelligence, Bloomberg is a member, CalcBench, and Audacity. Those 4 are members of the committee. We also have a member of the faculty of Vanderbilt University as an academic on the committee. Regarding preparers, we have a member of backcountry.com, and below that there are 2 standard setters, which they are not official members, they're official observers of the committee. They've been very active, The first one is the Financial Accounting Standards Board has a representative, and then the International Accounting Standards Board also has a representative. So interestingly, we cover both the standard setters of US GAAP and the IFRSs. Last one there is the filing agents. Merrill Corporation is a member, and that's where I'm at. And then Top and Vintage is the second filing agent that's a member of the committee. So that's the members of the committee and what it consists of. Let's talk about on the next slide more about the participation in the public review of this sixth rule set. And when I say sixth rule set, the Data Quality Committee has produced and put out and approved 5 previous rule sets. So a rule set is a group of rules that has been created, rules and guidance that's been created and then gone through this public review and then approved and put out for use by any filer or anybody in the public for the most part. So this sixth rule set, the rules have been created. We're now exposing them for public review over a 45-day public review period, which as you can see closes on May 7th of 2018, which of course means there's time for you to participate, time for you to understand these rules and comment on them. The importance of your participation is really twofold, but very key. And the first one is to refine the rules that you and or your clients should adhere to. And the second importance of the participation is that really more input from creators and users of the data equals better rules. The goal here is to create the rules and hopefully as good as possible, but this comment period will help to improve the rules, and that's why your participation is so important, is to improve the rules. So the fourth bullet, input that is needed by the Data Quality Committee, is really as follows. There's 3 key things. One is we need input on what is the concern or issue that you have with the proposed rule. Let us know that, and we ask that you please be as specific as possible when providing that input, including examples, if you can, using data that's been submitted, to the SEC. Very helpful. The second piece of input that's needed is to let us know how the rules should be revised. And again, as specific as possible, but we do need to know, given the concern you had in number 1, how should that rule be revised? And then thirdly, the third piece of input is to let us know how the suggested revision to the rule helps improve the usability of the data. So those are the 3 pieces of input we'd like that goes along with any comments. If your comment doesn't fit into those 3 very well, still please provide the comment in whatever fashion available. The 6th rule set, interestingly, includes both US GAAP and IFRS rules, as you can see at the bottom of that slide. This is the very first set of rules published that includes the IFRS rules. So the first 5 rule sets had no IFRS rules at all that address the IFRS taxonomy or IFRS filing. So the DQC is very glad to now include IFRS rules in this 6th rule set. But the question becomes, who cares about IFRS rules? Why are they even relevant? Isn't this a US GAAP filing? And here you can see why IFRS actually is extremely important. On March 1st of 2017, a little more than a year ago, the SEC provided notice that the IFRS taxonomy was available on the Commission's website. And what that did basically is announce that an XBRL mandate for these IFRS SEC filers is now occurring. So if you file with the SEC and prepare your financials in accordance with IFRS, then yes, there's a mandate coming. And the second bullet here says clearly that it states that all foreign private issuers that prepare their financial statements in accordance with IFRS must submit their financial statements in XBRL using the IFRS taxonomy, and it's for their first annual report for a fiscal period ending on or after December 15th of 2017, which is the financial period that, for the most part, just ended. So many filers are in that process. If your year end is December 31st of 2017, guess what? The annual report that you just finished, the company needs to submit that with XBRL financial statements. So right now we're seeing many of the IFRS XBRL filings submitted this month and in the past few months as well. Those are coming in a fast fashion. And one other thing related to these IFRS rules is that be aware that the IFRS rules that are included in this rule set number 6 are just a start. There will be a lot more IFRS related XBRL rules in subsequent rule sets. So keep your eyes open for those if you're interested in IFRS rules. With that, Michelle, I will pass it back to you.
Great, thanks very much, Lou. We're going to go on to a couple of CPE questions now. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the polls. And remember, for those of you who have requested getting CPE credit, please make sure that you respond to the questions here. So the first question, how long is the public review period? Is it 60 days, 30 days, or 45 days? So just click on the button of the one that you think is most appropriate, and we'll give a couple seconds here for people to respond to the question. Okay, we're just going to give it like another 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and shut down this poll. And now we're going to go to the second poll question. What is the purpose of the XBRL US Data Quality Committee? Is it to develop guidance and rules for securities analysts, to enable automated analysis of reported data? Is it to develop guidance and rules for issuers to enable automated analysis of reported data? Or is it to develop guidance and rules for foreign private issuers filing on their local market? So the first one, is it rules and guidance for securities analysts? The second is rules and guidance for issuers. And the third is guidance and rules for foreign private issuers filing on their local market. So again, please just click on the button that is most appropriate to record your response. And we'll just give this like another 10 seconds. Okay, I think we'll end the polling there. And those are all the questions that we're doing right now. We'll have another set a little bit later, so please watch for that. But now we're going to move on, and I'm going to turn it over to Campbell Pride, President and CEO of XBRL US, who's going to walk us through the 6th rule set.
Thank you, Michelle. So we currently have a public review for these rules, and most of these rules apply to updates to existing rules for the release of the 2018 taxonomy, which a number of you will probably start to consider using this year. So the ones we're looking at here on the screen are a number of rules that we have rolled out for the IFRS taxonomy, and these really reflect rules that already exist for the US GAAP taxonomy, and most of them relate to very basic information that you would expect to see in a filing. And these rules, if you can look at them on our website. I mean, Michelle's going to walk you through in a minute how to do the public review, but on each of these, they really relate to a piece of the taxonomy or the XBRL filing requirements that relate to something called the document entity information, which is published by the SEC. And in each of these rules are really just trying to make sure that this base data is correct. This data is very useful for people who are trying to consume the data. They want to know when the document is filed, what's the period end date for that information, so that it can be appropriately classified and used. So we just go through each of these rules here. The first one is the document period end date. This is basically making some checks to make sure that you've put the period in for the period incorrectly. This allows people to line periods up. Obviously, if you have a year end, which is in June, versus a year in December, you want to get that correct so that people can make appropriate classifications of the data that you're submitting. This rule, there's not a lot of errors for it, but it's just really a check to make sure that it's correct. The next rule relates to, this is a document period end date context, and it's just making sure that there's two ways you can report the document period end date, and you want to make sure that those dates are consistent. So this rule checks for that. The next rule, and this is actually surprisingly, there's a lot of problems with this in the IFRS filings that we've seen with the filings that have come in to date. And this is really checking that when you set up your table structures in your XBRL filing, that you build them correctly. And one of the things that the SEC requires is that if you create something called a dimension, and you have something called a default value on it. And what this basically does is, if I reported revenues, the default value, for example, that was the total value of all my revenues. And one of the requirements is that you don't change the default values that are defined in the FASB or the IFRS taxonomies. So we've seen that a lot of these have been changed. And so this rule will tell you if those have been changed. So if you file a filing and you have this error, you should go back and fix it. And I'll show you how you can do this in a minute. The third rule is DEI and block tag date contexts. Really, this is just checking that you put the right dates associated with the DEI concepts that you reported. And then the final rule that's being rolled out is what's called a reversed calculation rule for the IFRS filings. Now this, basically what this rule does is the IFRS taxonomy has a number of calculation relationships defined in it. So what this means is, current assets plus non-current assets equals assets. And one of the things you shouldn't be doing is reversing those calculations. So you shouldn't say assets plus current assets equals non-current assets, for example. And this rule is quite generic, and it'll go across the entire filing and make sure that your calculations are consistent with those provided in the IFRS taxonomy. And this often happens. People reverse the calcs by mistake. So this basically checks for that. So this is something you want to look at. And when you see this error, please don't discount it. You basically want to try and look at the calculation that's been defined in the rule with the results that come back to you. So this is just a high-level overview of each of these rules. You can go to our website, you can read a lot more about them, and you can also run them against your filing as well. We make a facility available on the website to do that. And if you're using a service provider, they can run these rules for you as well, either as part of their software or as a part of the service they offer to you. So we get the next slide, please, Michelle. So those are the IFRS rules. Now, the US GAAP rules, there's been some updates to these, and this really is, as I mentioned earlier, is for the 2018 taxonomy. I'll start with one on the right. Negative values. There've been a lot of elements added to the 2018 taxonomy, and most of these relate to revenue recognition and also to marketable securities. So there's a lot of new elements there. Just so everyone's aware, you will have to do quite a bit of retagging for the 2018 taxonomy because of these accounting changes, and they probably affected many of you in the day-to-day operations anyway, but there are changes to the taxonomy for these. So a lot of elements have been deprecated, particularly around revenue, and also particularly around financial instruments. So you probably want to have a look at that. But these rules basically identify those new elements, and basically put rules around those to make sure, hey, don't put these specific ones that can't be negative, don't enter them as a negative value. So there's a list on our website of those items that we think shouldn't be negative. Second, second one on the left is axes within appropriate members. So this already is an existing rule, and we have rules where, that basically follow guidance that's been issued by the FASB or the SEC, which basically checks if you've gone and have a fact value and you've reported it with an axes and a member, which is not an appropriate combination. So with the rollout of the 2018 taxonomy, there are a number of new members that have been added. So we've tried to address those. But more importantly, there's something called the SEC reporting taxonomy. If you're looking at using the 2018 taxonomy, you'll see that the US GAAP taxonomy has really been kind of split into two. One's called the SEC reporting taxonomy, which are supposed to be SEC reporting specific disclosures, and then US GAAP disclosures. Now, a number of axes and members have been taken from the US GAAP taxonomy and put into this new taxonomy. So this means the elements have changed, and it also means that filers are going to have to retag a bunch of these elements. Now, the element names are the same, but they're in what's called a different namespace, so it has a different prefix on them. But what this means is we had to update these rules just to make sure that they will work with the 2018 taxonomy. So there's quite a few changes. So what you will find is if you file with the 2018 taxonomy and you've got the wrong combination, this is going to flag. You'll probably find most of the problems really related to this is you're going to have elements that don't exist in the US GAAP taxonomy anymore. So you're going to have those type of errors. So you're going to have to retag them. Then this rule here will then check that you've made the appropriate combination of the two. So that's kind of a summary of that. We have more details about that on the website as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. You want to go to the next slide? So Michelle, I'll hand it over to you, and if you want to walk through the website and conducting the public review.
Great, thanks very much, Campbell. Yeah, the next part of the presentation is we're going to take a look at our website and demonstrate how someone could actually walk through and conduct the public review. Because as Lou was saying, we strongly encourage everyone to get involved in the public review, from issuers to vendors to service providers. It's really important to provide us feedback because that'll help us make the rules better. So if you come to the XBRL US website, you can click on the homepage here where you see this public exposure, or you can actually go to the data quality section, which you can see up here on the top navigation. If you click on that there, you can come down here and you see on the right side here for the Data Quality Committee, they have guiding principles for element selection, approved guidance and validation rules. So those are the approved rules, the 1 through 5 rule set. And then you can click on the public exposure of guidance and validation rules to get to the public exposure page. So here you can see that this is going through May 7th. And this is going to give you a preview of all of the rules. So there's a listing of all of the rules here. You can see each of them here, and we'll click on one in a minute. But what you need to do is you need to accept our terms and conditions for public comments. And so if you click on that, it's going to bring up a little web page that's just our terms and conditions. And essentially, we're just asking people to accept the terms and conditions to indicate that any comments that you provide are freely given, and there's no IP associated with your comments, that there's something that we can incorporate freely, because of course we want all of these rules to be free. And so we want to make sure that no one comes back and suggests that they own some portion of the rules, because these are free for all issuers. And that's really one of the key benefits of the rules. So if you go through and read this, you can just input your contact information, click I agree to submit that, and then you'll be freely available to use the rules. And I've already done that, as you can imagine. So if I go through, to come back to the original page I was on, and let's just click on, I'm going to click on this one because it's a little bit longer than the first one, just to show you the type of information that you'll be able to see on each rule. So here, there's an explanation of the rule function, exactly what it's designed to do. There are authoritative references, so this helps you kind of link it back to any SEC references or FASB references that may be appropriate. Explains the problem solved on the rule. What kinds of issues were we identifying in the reported data that really prompted the need for this kind of rule. We also include an example rule message. And this is important because this is basically what will pop up when you encounter one of these errors. So this needs to be clear and understandable, and the users, the preparers need to understand what to do next when they see this example, when they see this rule message. And then there's some, so if this is not clear, you need to let us know. Then there's some information for developers and the message template itself. And then, the rule element ID index. So this is all developer related information that may be helpful for those of you who want to incorporate the rules into your tool. And then, down at the bottom is an opportunity to actually leave your message. So if you can just come to this box, key your message in here, and then, post your comment. And if you click on participate in this conversation via email, you will receive notification of new comments about this post. So someone else can actually comment on your comment. And then that can lead to a conversation that may lead to, some kind of consensus reached on, how best to incorporate these rules. So again, we encourage everybody to participate, and we hope that this process is easy to use. But if you have any questions, of course, you can always contact us. So I'm now going to go back to our presentation. And that covered conducting the public review. And now I'm actually going to turn it back over to Campbell, who's going to talk about how you can check your filing. Because one of the things that you may want to do as you work through these rules is test it against your own filing. See what kind of results you encounter. If you find that you get a result that you disagree with, you may want to submit a comment. So my recommendation is check your filing first, and then run through the rules and see which has been triggered by your filing, because that can really impact that you provide to us and make it much more useful. So with that, I will turn it back over to Campbell. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can begin sharing.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so let me just share my screen. Okay, so as Michelle mentioned, there's a facility to check your filing on the website. So I'll just walk you through how you do that. So if you go to the XBRL US website that Michelle was on recently, I'll just show you how to get there. And similar to what Michelle already mentioned, so you can go to data quality here, or the public exposure. And on here, on this right-hand menu, you can see there's a number of different choices. One was to do a public exposure and provide a comment. And the next one is to check your filing with data quality rules. Just log out of here, because it will ask you to log in, and you will need it'll ask you, this is how you use it. This is how you use the, excuse me. This is how you can, this is when you get set up. This is what you got to log in. So one thing you do need to use this is just to create a login. If you have a login with us, you can already use it. If not, then you just need to create one. So you'd log in, and then basically the screen you will see will change. Once again, I'll ask you for terms and conditions and access and use. And this is just really, the point of this is to control. We don't want people coming in and running thousands of filings against the server. This is really set up as a convenience for filers to be able to come in and check their filings, rather than being used as an automated way to go through every single filing by someone to check all the to check every single filing that's being filed with the SEC. So once you've gone through and accepted that, it basically gives you back a box which gives you some choices. You can run the approved rules, which is the version 5 rules. These are all the rules that have been accepted today. You can also run the US GAAP rules for the public exposure, and this will include the already approved rules. So if you choose that, you can run that. And then you can also run the IFRS rules that have been released as well. So you've got a choice here. It depends what you want to check. The reason we have three of these is just because just to make it easier for folks. When we're not conducting a public review, you can still come to this website and you can still run it. When there's no public review on, it'll basically, you'll just indicate if you want to run for approved rules or public exposure rules, and then it'll work out which filing you've already used. So when you run the approved rules, if you had a filing you did with 2016 or 2017 or 2018 taxonomies, it doesn't really matter. It'll run the appropriate rule set. So then you choose a file. I've just downloaded some before. This is an IFRS filing. You click on it, so you'll see the filing come up here. And then you can check the filing. And then got to put a filing in. So I'm going to select the IFRS. I'm going to choose a filing, which this is an IFRS filing I just downloaded before the webinar. So this is IFRS. This is going to run the public exposure, and I can check the filing. And what it does is this submits the filing to our server, and then it'll run it. We do have a SAS 70 or an SSA 18 that we've done. So if you're uncomfortable with running the rules on this, then let us know and we can give you a copy of that. If that still doesn't make you comfortable, there is a facility to download some software and be able to run it on your local machine, and you can do that as well. So there's a number of choices depending on what you feel most comfortable with. So in the case of this filing, there's no error found, so this one's fine. I did run another one, another filing earlier, and this company this is another IFRS filing, and they had a few errors. And this is one of the errors we talked about earlier. This was the dimension default issue. So this company had basically changed that. So you can see, I just want it to be worthwhile just walking through just the message structure so it kind of makes sense. It has the date that it was run, and it has the rule number, DQC IFRS 4173. So if you go back to what Michelle was walking you through before. On the public comments, each of these things has a number, so then that's how you can reference it. So here we have the DQC 41, and this is axes with the default member, and then you can at least reference back what was this rule about, and you can see then this is the reference number for it, 4173. Get to the right place here. And so this is basically that rule. So at least you can go back to it, you can see what it is, you can see what it's about. And so this basically then has a definition of what the issue is. So it says the dimension default defined, and you can see here, it's just saying, look, you've used, the default was classed as a financial liability axis. For this axis, it should have this item, liabilities member. But it's been replaced with this. So this kind of tries to make it pretty obvious so that you can see, okay, I should have used this one, but I've gone and changed it with this one, and I should change it back. Then it says in the extension taxonomy role, then it'll tell you where this axis was used in the filing. So it's used in the fair value financial assets and liabilities details 4, and it gives you the number. So this is the sort order that you would see in the taxonomy. In your filing, so you can go back and then you should be able to find the location. Then we just basically say, where, if you think, oh, I don't think this is a real issue, then just give you some guidance in terms of where the SEC had issued guidance in the past on this and why you shouldn't do it. So this is all just this one particular error. So that's how that works. So you'll get these back, and then obviously you can just walk through them and resolve each one. The other thing to be aware of is also the US GAAP rules. Same deal here. You can run these. So and I'll just show you. I show you you can choose a file. Now I need a US GAAP file, and I'll just show you these zip files where you can get them from. So these are you need to submit a zip file to the service, and usually this is the same zip file that you would submit to the SEC. So I'll just give you an example of this. I'm just going to log in one of our system and just get a recent filing that was filed with the SEC. So for example, here's a 10K sector. I'm just randomly selecting one of these. So I'm just going to go to this is just the website of the SEC, and these are the filings that were made with the SEC. So if you want to see all the files that are included, you can actually just shorten this up. And for this filing, this is all the files that were there. And it's basically this zip file. This is the zip file that was submitted to the SEC, so we can just download that. I've got this on my machine now. So then, if I'm going to check my filing, US GAAP filing, I can choose the file. This is the file I just downloaded, and then you can run it and check it. So it just shows, you know, if you've already submitted and you wanted to go back and check one of your filings that you've submitted before, you can do that. So this is similar again. This is the proposed release rules, but it also includes the previously approved rules. So you kind of get just a list of them. So this company had a few issues. So just to give you the other thing you should be aware on these rule messages, obviously the number in the message. If it's a fact value where we know there's a fact that has a problem in it, it's going to basically tell you the property. So it's going to say here, interest paid. This is where the issue is. And it's got this period from 2016, 01, 2016, 12, 31. So this just helps you find where the error is. So, you know, then you can look in your filing and say, oh, I know what my interest is. This is in the cash flow section. Okay, let me go and have a look at it and fix it. So all of the rules for all this particular filer, these are all just existing rules. There's none that have come up here because it's using the 2017 taxonomy as part of the public review. But I just want to make you sure that you know if you're going to check your filing, you know, how you can get the zip file and how you can download it, and how you can then run the filing against the service that's here. So with that, Michelle, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, thanks very much, Campbell. I'm going to go back to our slides again. Okay, and we have a few CPE questions, but let me first ask some questions that were submitted. Oh, actually, I don't think I'm sharing my screen now, am I? Let's see, hang on. Sorry, bear with me a sec. Okay. Okay, there were some questions that we received from the audience that I wanted to ask to Campbell and Lou. The first question is, and this is a question I think for Lou, what is the role of the IASB in creating these rules? You know, I think they noticed that somebody from the IASB is sitting in as an observer. And so what role are they playing in developing these rules?
You know, the IASB is not the body that's creating the rules. As you said, they have an observer there that is, I'll just say, tracking and helping and suggesting and giving a lot of input when IFRS rules are created. So the IASB, the IFRS Foundation, has an XBRL taxonomy team that creates the taxonomy, and that's the same group that also creates what's called IFRS formula link base, which is a set of items that you can run your file against as well, but it's different than the DQC rules. So the IASB is at the table observing, and they're very involved once the rules are created and placed out for discussion. So I will say, lastly, regarding the IFRS rules that we're talking about here, yes, the IASB's IFRS taxonomy team did take a look at them prior to us putting those out for public comment.
Great, thank you. And then a follow-up question we received from someone else. Does the IFRS Foundation taxonomy team intend to include these rules in their standard taxonomy?
Really, these rules aren't such that you can put them in the IFRS taxonomy. It's rather, if you're creating XBRL using the IFRS taxonomy, it's certain things that you should make sure you don't do, such as putting the date context for the text blocks different than the date context for the DEI reporting period. You know, a rule like that you can't control via a taxonomy. That's just the preparer improperly using the taxonomy. So the ones that are in here for rule set 6, no, I don't think the taxonomy will change at all based on that. Subsequently, if we do other rules and we look at it and say, wow, if the taxonomy could change, this would be taken care of at that point, and we wouldn't need a DQC rule, we'll definitely do that. I mean, that would be the ideal way to handle something, is have the taxonomy be such that you can't make the error. But at this point, there's still room for making errors, so we have the DQC rules.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I think just to add to that, most of these rules that have been rolled out for IFRS really relate to the use of the DEI taxonomy relative to the IFRS filing. So a number of these rules are not really related specifically to the IFRS taxonomy itself, but using the DEI taxonomy when making an IFRS filing. The other part, just to be aware in terms of IASB involvement, is if you look at this rule, which we have changing the default dimensions, and if you look through the rule form and read that in detail, one of the comments in there is that there is an exception. There is one that you can change relating to continuing operations. And there were some changes made to the IFRS taxonomy. So the IASB was like very clear on this and said, look, you know, you can actually change it in this particular case. So that, you know, that's kind of good feedback. So they give us this kind of feedback, so then that can get incorporated into the rule as well.
Okay, the next question that we received is the checking tool on the XBRL US website the only way to run the rules?
So we have the rules available up on a site called Github as well, which is like a code sharing site. So that is made available, so you can take a download of those rules and a tool called it's made available in a tool called REL, which is an open source software. So you can take that, you can load it, you can run it either on a PC or a Mac or a Unix box as well. So you can download that to your own machine, and then you can download those rules. We've got a lot of instructions on our website on how to do that. And then you can run those filings, your filing locally as well. So the things you need for that is really basically the REL software, which you can download, and it should run. Basically install it, and then basically it includes also the rule set, and you can download those rule sets and run them. You can also run the approved rules with that as well. So you just have to work out which ones you want to run, and then go from there.
Right, and I think, Campbell, also with the approved rules, lots of software providers have incorporated the rules into their tools. So like any software provider that's a member of the center has probably already incorporated those rules. And in fact, there is a page on our website on software that has been certified to run the rules successfully and appropriately. So users can take a look at that web page, which I think is linked off the data quality section, and just see the number of providers that have incorporated the rules and are able to run them successfully. So like, Merrill Corporation obviously is one of those organizations.
Right, and just in relation to that, the proposed rules, some of them may not be able to run, obviously, because they're looking to incorporate them. They're not going to incorporate them until the public review is finished, because those rules are subject to change. Sometimes there's cases or situations that were not thought about. So in those cases, the rule will change. So obviously once that's finalized, then most of these will get incorporated. So probably the best place to try and play with the proposed rules is either on the website or downloading them from the GitHub site. And maybe it might be just worthwhile just showing you how you do that. I'll just share my screen if you want to do that. So Michelle, if you just mind sharing.
Okay.
So this is on the same location. We have a link to it on our website. Just so if you do want to do that, it's clear how to do it. So here's our website here. If you can see my screen, And on here is, you can see we've got these things here, but we also have these developer resources and this reference implementation code. So if you click on this, this takes you to the GitHub site, and this basically has all the files you need. Now, so basically, ignore that. You kind of want to just read these instructions or give it to your IT group and say, hey, can you help me out with this? If you're not comfortable with it. And this basically just walks through every single possible situation you could possibly have in terms of running these. So this basically just gives a very detailed instructions on how to do it. Now, this looks a lot more complicated than it actually is, because this covers every possible scenario. If you want to run approved rules or proposed rules, et cetera, how you can set it up on a server and all this kind of stuff. So basically, the gist of it is you download these rules, you basically put it into a directory in the RHEL software, and then you can run them. That's basically how it works. It's not plug and play at this point, because obviously you want to get the rules developed, but everything you need is on here. But I would get your IT group involved if you want to run them locally. And the reason for that, it's kind of set up for more of a server environment, and set up as a back-end process so that people can incorporate it into their software.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to go back and share my screen again, and we do have one other question. One last question before we get to the CPE questions, and that's how many companies have filed in IFRS so far? I don't know if you're on top of that, Campbell.
I haven't run it, but Lou, for a couple of weeks. Lou, maybe you know.
It's about, I guess I would say about 250. Last time I counted was 236, but I'm sure some have filed since then. So let's just say about 250. Maybe more, which is roughly half or more than half of the filers that will come in. So we'll, they have till April 30th, and then some, of course, will use the 30-day grace period for their first filing. So there's more to come.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead with the poll questions for CPE. So again, for those of you getting CPE credit, please make sure to take a look at your screen now and respond to the question that you see up here, which is DQC rules specific to the IFRS taxonomy include which of the following? Do they include negative value rules, reverse calculation rules, or positive value rules? So just click on the one that you think is most appropriate, and we'll give it a few more. We'll give it another 30 seconds or so for people to respond. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close down the polling. And we'll go to our fourth and last question. Rules specific to the US GAAP taxonomy included in the 6th rule set include negative values, additions and removals, mandatory elements, or document period end date context rules. So click on the response you think is most appropriate. And we'll give it another 20 seconds or so here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. Thanks to everybody for responding to those questions. And we're going to go on to our last screen here, which is about some upcoming webinars that XBRL US is hosting. On May 1st, we're going to have a session on using the SEC reporting taxonomy that Campbell had mentioned earlier. This will be a discussion with the SEC and the FASB. Speakers on that event will be Mike Willis from the Securities and Exchange Commission and Louis Mathern from the FASB. And they're going to have an interesting discussion about, how to use the SEC reporting taxonomy in the context of the US GAAP taxonomy, the IFRS taxonomy, and really go through some guidance that they have put together. We also have another event that we have not yet posted that's going to take place in June, and that's going to focus on revenue recognition and how the XBRL rules or XBRL standard applies to revenue recognition and what people can do in terms of incorporating that into their XBRL filing. So we've got a bunch of interesting programs coming up. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I want to thank Lou Roman from Merrill Corporation and Campbell Pride from XBRL US very much for sharing with us information about the public review. And please do, take a look at the rules, check the rules against your filing and see how they apply to you personally, and then provide us with comments to help us make the rules even better. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.